The film board gathers. The gang of thugs is here to take on a movie currently in theaters, and this month, let's call it counter-programming. The crew is going to try to prove that we, too, are Kenough as we talk about Greta Gerwig's much pinker sequel to Little Women. It's Barbie.
Hey, Barbie. Can I come to your house tonight?
Sure. I don't have anything big planned, just a giant blowout party with all the Barbies and planned choreography and a bespoke song. You should stop by.
So cool.
You can find me under the lights, diamonds under my eyes.
This is the best day ever.
It is the best day ever. So is yesterday, and so is tomorrow, and every day from now until forever. Do you guys ever think about dying?
When my heart breaks,
Some things have been happening that might be related.
when my world shakes.
Cold shower, falling off my roof, and my heels are on the ground. What do I have to do?
You have to go to the real world. You can go back to your regular life, or you can know the truth about the universe. The choice is now yours.
The first one, the high heel.
You have to want to know, okay? Do it again.
Closer I am.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, but you can call me Referee Ken. And I simply couldn't be more excited to introduce our panel of the Kenniest of Kens. It's our very own pizza chef, Ken. It's Steve Sarmento.
Here is your medium pizza bianco on cauliflower crust. There's no whiter pizza than that.
So hipster, coming straight from rounds, it's Nurse Ken, Justin Jaeger.
I'm just Ken.
Yours is better than mine. And smelling of coffee and steamed milk, it's Barista Ken, Tommy Metz.
Everybody, it's me, Barista Ken. I can't do voices like Steve can. Everybody.
And I will say that Referee Ken, Pizza Chef Ken, and Barista Ken were released in 2019 and Nurse Ken in 2021 from the Hall of Kens. I'm trying to keep it as legit as Greta did in this movie. And oh my gosh, did she ever. IMDb says Barbie suffers a crisis that leads her to question her world and her existence. How did we do, gents, with Barbie? I happen to actually see it with JJ, so he gets to go last. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
sure.
Steve, would you like to open the arguments?
Sure. When people ask me about this, I tell them this is not a Mattel movie directed by Greta Gerwig. This is a Greta Gerwig film where she was allowed to use Mattel properties within it. Those are two very different things. And I think people expecting a Mattel movie were very surprised. I was very excited by what I saw on that screen.
Oh my goodness. I know how JJ felt already, and I'm very excited. So far, I think we're 3 for 4. Tom?
I didn't see it. No, I did see it. And my thoughts were, it's so exciting to see a movie like this or any kind of movie where it seems like it's so of the moment where it wouldn't be allowed, nor would anyone have thought to have made it in this way, even like 10 years ago. There's a very clear, I can't, move my arms right movie that would be right over the plate that people would have been fine with and it would have come and gone. And then there's this movie and that's thrilling.
Oh, what a relief, JJ.
Well,
Bring it home.
we saw it together in OmniMax.
Amazing.
And it was huge and pink and overwhelming, and I was properly overwhelmed throughout. I loved it. Easily my favorite movie of the year. Hovering everywhere in that I put for greatness. Listeners may remember Tommy and I doing a podcast years ago talking about mind benders. And for the deep thinker, this isn't a movie only for deep thinkers,
right?
But for the deep thinker that was maybe put off by the frenetic pace of everything everywhere all at once, or the fighting or the nonsense that's in that, this is another way to tell the same story about exactly what you said, Pete, in terms of IMDb saying a crisis, questioning your world and your existence. This was a perfect movie for me. It was the mind bender I wanted, and I enjoyed it more than I even expected to. So I'm super happy to be talking about it with you today.
That was my experience with it, just seeing it with you and your boys. Like, your kids are
Oh,
with us,
fun.
and what was so I was really curious what they were going to do walking out of this movie, because they are not the target audience for Barbie. And I every time I looked over at them, they were laughing, like out loud laughing. And you and I together, I haven't laughed this much straight through a movie, beginning to end, all the way to the third act, like heartstrings, in a long time. Like, I felt like this movie was just chock-a-block with great things to chuckle at, and I can't wait to see it again. I walked out thinking, I cannot wait to see this movie again. Apparently, there are people who didn't like it, and we'll talk about them. I think their nicknames all start with "Save the Patriarchy." What did you guys think of the ideology, and how Gerwig and we'll say co-writer and partner, spouse, Noah Baumbach, handled this whole idea of the ideology of Barbie and how it is presented in this film? Steve?
I saw this on an early Saturday morning. So there were lots of moms with their young girls, and I thought, oh, it's Barbie, with the trailer. And then as soon as we started getting into patriarchy, I thought, oh, there's going to be some interesting conversations on the car ride home, because I was not expecting that at all. But that is one of the great things about this movie that I enjoyed so much. As you said, there are so many laughs, but it's tackling these big issues in a way that's just head on. It's bringing the ridiculous out right up front. It sets the stage so early on when we're introduced to Ken, and he's introduced as he needs Barbie to see him. That's all Ken needs, is he needs Barbie's attention. That's what motivates him. That's his driving force. And it's played as a joke, but then we see how much that plays into the patriarchy and his conflicts, all of that going on. Everything was so well structured and pieced together and balanced that I was just in awe of this accomplishment. And I love the fact that it tackles something big like this in a way that isn't, I can't see how you could be offended by this, because you have to laugh at it, but you laugh at it because it's true, right? The absurdity of it all is right there on display.
I think the interesting thing is that, this is the anti-woke movement's, either greatest nightmare or greatest rallying point, really, when you watch this movie. And I think that the people who are going to be offended are pretty much sent in that category. That being said, it's really interesting, Steve, that you bring up the concept of a mom and a daughter having interesting conversations about the patriarchy as they drive home, because I got to have that with my boys too. My boys are 11 and 13. And one of the things my 13-year-old said was, it kind of made me feel bad to be a man.
Mm.
And I was like, oh,
Right.
Well, I said, here's the thing, like, that's kind of the point. It's not about you.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
I get what you're saying, but we need to take the focus off of how we feel watching this and just digest the information about the way it is to be, and not to be one or the other. And I think it's interesting, that he felt that way. They liked it. They liked it, but it was confusing. It was hard. It was something that was a challenge. And I love that it was that for them. I don't think, just like you're saying, Steve, I don't think anyone expects that from this movie. And I'm so happy that Greta and Noah went there, because it was a landmark for me to watch that.
That's really interesting. I find myself, for a second there, I was nearly crying, because as soon as we started talking about patriarchy, I remembered Ryan Gosling saying at the high school, I've got to go into the library and see if I can find some books about trucks. And I think that line is so funny, it brings me to tears.
Yes.
I can't even contain it. But then the reality is, when you say it's not about you, this whole movie gives you such an opportunity as a man to say, hey, you know what makes you feel good as a man is laughing at the history and the weight of this movie. Laugh at it with the women who feel strongly about it. Be a part of that journey and not reactionary to it. And it feels better. It's just funny. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking or underthinking. Tom, do you have any experience with the with that piece of it?
Yeah, well, I love how it really does get some. There's many levels. It can meet you at any kind of level that you want. And I like that there is a lot of ideology and thoughts about ideology, and it never feels preachy, though, to me.
Yeah.
It never feels, and it really doesn't feel angry ever. If anything, it feels frustrated.
Yeah.
When American Ferrera does her amazing list of
Oh,
the
gosh.
impossibility
What a
of the
speech.
duality of being a woman, which is such a better written version of the speech from Gone Girl. Which is about, all men want the cool girl that's so thin but eats cheeseburgers or whatever. This is like an actually like really smart version of that and a much wider net for all of that stuff. But even that was done in a fun, quick, frustrated, don't you see kind of thing. I never felt yelled at. I never felt that I was anything other than enjoying the moment. And I really like that. And as far as just like that, when Steve was saying, about one of the things about having Ken set up in the beginning, I think, and really that puts us on the path. One of my favorite smart things about the script is to have all the Barbies under the assumption that they solved things.
Mhm.
They're not gloating about it. They're not gross. They're just like, oh, we did this, and isn't this great? And everything's solved. And then for them to sort of be their own audience surrogate as they find out that it's not that, and how easily things can change. That's a really smart way to start the world and to have stakes in the world even before, because it's a long time before we go to the real world. And so we, the audience, know so much more about what's really going on, but it was fun to be ahead of the characters instead of behind them, which isn't always the case.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Boy, they open with the whole conceit that the Barbies have solved it very, very early. So you get to live with them as this, fish in water before we get to what is actually ends up being a very simple architecture of the film. It is two fish out of water stories. We got fish out of water when Barbie and Ken go to the real world and they have their little mini context awareness, and then we go back to Barbie Land and we have that exact same sort of awakening context, and also heist kidnapping movie,
it becomes
it's sort of a weird Barbie hostel, like it ends up being I think a lot of movie. There's a lot of movie jammed into an hour and 54 minutes, and I didn't find myself overwhelmed by it. My only regret walking out of the movie was how much I missed because it moved so fast.
But it was
how many jokes I'm not going to remember.
Yeah. Before it, they clearly don't know exactly how to. They've marketed this movie great, but the trailers before it in my theater were so schizophrenic. They don't know what they're doing. And so they're just sort of throwing everything out there. And just seeing the trailer for World Trolls Tour, whatever it is, whatever the next troll movie is, which even from the trailer is so filled, but without purpose. It just needs to keep having 19 plot points. And then this, which had 40, but it always felt so purposeful, which is great. Can I make a real quick story about the opening of the movie? Because it starts with they did a lot of the sequence in an early teaser trailer where it's the little girls in the beginning of time and they're playing with the dolls and stuff. Halfway through, especially when it's already like da da da, my mom leans. I saw it with my parents in Boulder. My mom leans over to me and very loudly goes, "From Planet of the Apes." And I leaned back to her and said, 2001, and you're whispering too loud. So that was me and my mom having a good bonding moment over the beginning. You're wrong and you're loud. And then I felt the rest of the movie. I was like, got it. She can be loud. She can be loud Barbie if she wants to.
She can be loud Barbie. That was interesting. See, we in the Omnimac, we saw it in a museum, and the museum had no trailers, and it was on the biggest of the big screens. And so that 2001 bit played
so good.
Fantastically. Like when they finally do that tilt up shot and show giant Margot Barbie, it felt like I was watching 2001 in the theater in the most beautifully tongue-in-cheek dramatic way. I thought it was really special. Speaking of the Barbies, we have a lot of Barbies. Margot Robbie, she is a
white
producer on this white savior Barbie. Yes, boy, they do not shy away from calling these things what they are.
Right.
And and she is a producer on the film and really sounds like spearheaded all of this. She's the one who brought the project to Greta Gerwig. She's the one who sort of has been driving it for the last several years, and she ends up, I think, doing really smart justice to this character. What Barbies stick out to you guys as you were watching this through all of their little see-through houses and so much waving?
Well, like the idea of when you are looking at the sun and the moon is around, then you don't really notice the moon because the sun is so bright. Like, I did love America Ferrera, but I was laser focused on Margot Robbie for most of the film. She nailed it, and she nailed it in all different kinds of ways creatively with this. So literally, I'm going through the list of the cast as we're prepping for this show, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was there too. Oh yeah, like I kept doing that. But her performance was Herculean to me here. She carried everything that was necessary for me in this film.
I don't think anybody will be surprised, given it was you and your lobbying efforts who got Barbie on the calendar for us to talk about in the first place because of your love of Margot Robbie. So
she may be my favorite filmmaker. I mean, and I know we're going to talk about Barbenheimer a little bit later, but like what she does and what she puts together to produce films right now in Hollywood is remarkable. I will follow her choices because they are so good.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially after just watching her performance in Babylon, like coming off of, talk about two radically different films, Christy, of Margot Robbie's back to back.
Sure. So I would say early on, we get, in that intro of Barbie, we get sort of like all of these different Barbies. One that stuck out in my mind right away is, as we're having the dance party, we've got the Barbie in the wheelchair. So we're getting this whole like diversity, equity, inclusion, all this of Barbie is everyone. And we get that, and we get that in the casting as well, because we have Hari Neff as Dr. Barbie. So it's like, okay, we've got a trans woman as Barbie. We're tackling this not just as a concept, but in how we're casting this, who we're putting in this movie. And Issa Rae as President Barbie. There's, we've got every type of person represented in these Barbies that we see. And I love that because, we have Margot Robbie as that stereotypical Barbie, but we have the spectrum of people that are playing Barbie. And to me, that was so important, so that anybody that goes to see this can say, there's someone like me in there. Yeah. I'm Barbie represents me because here's this person, whether it's writer Barbie or physicist. We've got, all the careers, colors, everything across the board. And to me, that I was so thrilled that they carried that through, because that's part of the tricky balancing act that they sort of play into with Barbie. Of Barbie represents all of these ideals, but as we hear from Sasha later on, like, it's an unattainable ideal. You've set us up for failure because everything is so perfect. You've solved these problems. You've set us these models that we can't achieve by being all of these things. And that's a dynamic that, again, is at the heart of the story. It's part of that conflict, and to tackle that, because it's as soon as you say there's a movie about Barbie, it's, oh, okay, the unreachable ideal that all women are measured against. Well, let's lean into that in how we tackle this story.
And confront it in the face of not just gender politics, but corporate politics. That was the piece that surprised me heartily in this film, when she actually makes the journey to the real world and confronts the leadership of Mattel, leadership in the form of, Will Ferrell playing the CEO of Mattel, and asks everybody to call him Mother. On a table surrounded by white men, really talking about how enthusiastic they are about portraying or about making toys for girls and women, and how proud they are of everything they've done to bend over backwards to make toys for girls and women, and still not looking at themselves as they are white men. I think
of two things: Sprinkles. Sprinkles. What was it? And women empowerment or something like that. The amount that, they really, I think they had to, but still, this goes back in my opening thoughts about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, this wouldn't have happened. The amount that Mattel is making fun of themselves, right, is phenomenal, is really outstanding. When you hear about so many IP companies, like, what was it just that Nintendo was in a fight with, like, Mario can't be any different than Luigi, like there were different size differences in some movie, maybe it was Ready Player One, of all of their, like, how precious they can be with themselves and with their own things. And Mattel clearly was just like, go for it. Someone in Mattel was like, this is going to work, and this is the only way to really do this. Otherwise, they're going to know. And so they just set themselves up to be in a boardroom. This is behind Mattel, and to have Will Ferrell say, so we had that woman and then another one. So that's two female CE. I mean, that's like biting. That is literally biting. And
based on reality, right?
Yes.
I mean, they went into history to tell their story in a self-deprecating way that is really remarkable.
Someone probably older was very nervous about this and was sending notes saying, no, we can't do this. We can't do this. And the right people won out. And it's just remarkable. I really like that.
I just to break the veil of reality, the real CEO of Mattel is Ynon Kreiz, and he is noted as having said, with Toys R Us failing, our market has changed dramatically, and we're a big company that needs to stay afloat, and we need to pivot, and so we are now an IP company.
Right.
It's just who we are.
But
So
like
they're doing the
or
Disney
16
thing,
other
right?
things.
Yeah. So they are trying to renegotiate and bring back all the IP that they had formerly licensed out, because this is, and JJ, you got me thinking about this when we walked out, and you had said, this is the Barbie
MCU.
cinematic or the Mattel cinematic universe or Barbie cinematic universe. Well, that's where we're going with this. And I think this is a hell of a movie to start with. If I can get past my naturally sort of cynical vibe, it's really okay. Like I to riff on Batman, right? The new axiom of our age: you either die a hero or live long enough to see every company become an IP company. That feels like kind of where we are. Was there any drip of disingenuousness that in your view of this thing?
No, and it reminds me of when we first saw the Lego movie, how they were very comfortable just sort of saying, yep, this is what we're doing. It's different animation than you've ever seen. And we're literally going to push Legos because that's what we are. That's the kind of company we are. And as we do some research about what's happening for Mattel, they're opening up the toy box. They're talking about the potential of different movies with like Hot Wheels and Rock'em Sock'em robots, and like those things are out there. So that's Mattel. And now, just after we talked about that, I've also seen, and I'm not kidding, clues about a Hasbro-niverse as well. In that, and I didn't see the last Transformers movie, but in the last Transformers movie, they made a crossover from what I hear, and again, I didn't see it, but introducing G.I. Joe. With this kind of thing, that they are going to exist in the same universe in terms of IP. So like now, I think it's a brilliant idea to think in that way of, we lost our brick and mortar supply chain to reach customers. So what is the way now? And this is the best version of it yet that I can see in terms of toy IP, for sure.
So Hasbro needs to come up with a better name, because it cannot be the Hasbro-niverse, because that's doomed to sink.
MCU already has a throne, so Mattel's already in good shape with it.
Oh yeah,
already planning my Hasbro-niverse tattoos. So scratch that. Felt like such a natural to me.
So, okay.
Lizzo, can we talk about Lizzo?
Oh,
so did you feel the affinity to Lizzo in the opening 20 minutes of this movie that I did?
I loved it.
I mean, the way that they elected to integrate the music into the story was sublime. It was one of those things that I found like at once shocking and hysterical, that that she's, because you don't see that kind of interaction with soundtrack in most movies. I can't think of another movie that has done it. I'm sure you can. Tom, you probably have one on deck.
Sure. And then you're going to put it in there. Because I'll think of it later, and then you're just going to put it right in there.
Yeah.
Well, of course, you got to go with. Coming right after the dog barks.
Yes, right. Yeah, I mean, what it reminds me of is, and it's not the same, but what Edgar Wright did with Baby Driver and
Oh, yeah.
really integrating. He did it the opposite way, right? Like he curated the film to the music that he was choosing. And then here they just take it to another level and they introduce Lizzo as a narrator B and
Right.
like doing it through music.
It's like
It
a great
was
chorus. Yeah.
it was, yeah. Oh, I love that idea. Yes, I think and when she's spelling out the letters, and then when they have the reprise of the song, it comes back, and now we have a more intense version. I don't know. The creativity there is something that I so appreciated in this movie.
I was thinking about, like you say Greek chorus, we have another participant in the Greek chorus, and that's Helen Mirren, right? Who
Right.
who
Right.
has an incredible role in this movie, right? Just first of all, the opening voiceover, the voiceover to carry us through the story, and then one of the most incisive lines in the movie
Right.
comes
To the
when
filmmakers.
yeah, a
Yeah.
note to the filmmakers casting Margot Robbie in to deliver this message is, no, I don't even remember the incomplete line. To deliver this message is not the best idea, or something
Yeah, it's
like
gonna
that. When
it's gonna
talking
make
about,
it's gonna be hard to make this point stick because she's
yes,
like,
Something
I
like
don't
that.
feel pretty. I
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
feel pretty, and everyone's like,
She doesn't
well,
even say
right.
that. She says, "I'm not pretty," and
I'm
that's
not
the
pretty.
thing. Like I laughed. It was uncontrollable laughter. The scene had moved on, and I couldn't stop laughing because we hadn't heard Helen Mirren in 45 minutes, and we never hear her again. It was totally non sequitur, totally my kind of humor, and I lost it. I haven't lost it in a film laughing since I was in college. Like it was so good and hit me so hard. Like I loved it, and I'm so glad they did that.
But the use of that voiceover is also interesting. It's something that often we complain about, right?
Mm.
And I'm curious if voiceover became tiresome at all, Steve.
No, there's the tone of this movie is so odd and unique, and it comes to the music. There's that piece because we have that Lizzo song, which is sort of that extraneous element, but then we've got singing within. We've got a musical number from Ken. We've got all of that. So we have a voiceover that's explaining things to us as the audience, but then it's commenting on it itself. It just takes it to that level. There's so many pieces to this. The hyper real, design of the world, all of that. As I was leaving the theater, I was trying to put my finger on what does this movie make me feel like? What can I connect this to? And the only thing I can think of is the Rocky Horror Picture Show, because I can imagine people coming back to this and interacting with this film, singing those songs, engaging in dialogue back and forth with this movie because it asks for that. It's not just a show for you to watch. It's something that engages you really actively, and the narrator helps us do that. And it's the only way I could wrap my head around. There's something similar to this that has this feel. And that's the only thing I could come up with because there's nothing else like this. And it leans on its strengths so well. It knows exactly how to deliver all of those pieces.
And I think it's also the traditional or first draft idea would be to have Barbie be the voiceover.
Yes.
Be Barbie be our
Yes.
entry into the world of this is me, this is my neighbors. We solved feminism, like all of those things. The problem with that in this, I think the idea that we are invited in from a God's eye view for someone on the God mic into the story, that helps smooth over the amount of, for a film that is so dense and so fun, all the parts that are really hard to explain, they on purpose don't. And they actually have characters say like, but don't think too hard about it. Like getting from Barbie land to the real world and back, because all of that is junk. You don't need it. And especially if it's sort of addressed. But the idea of like wrapping everything up of we're going to tell you a story from top down. You're going to be involved, and then we're going to leave makes it different because then you don't have to have Barbie constantly being like, but wait, but what? You can just sort of see her involved in the story. I think it's a really smart, it's a subtle distinction, but one that makes an enormous amount of difference.
Yeah, for sure. And that God's eye view, like that coming in on Barbie as she wakes up and her eyes pop open, like effectively that's the Princess Bride opening the book, right? Like
Right.
it's introducing us to a fable, and that's kind of the spirit that the movie exudes throughout. I think super smart.
Yeah.
Did you have another point?
I wanted to talk about the humor, because the humor was brought up, that the idea, the transition was going to be when we were talking about the songs, when she's spelling out Barbie, the second time, what she's saying doesn't even match the letters.
She's saying,
Oh, yeah.
it doesn't the first time either. And
Well,
she's
it's sort
spelling
of-
out pink because,
But,
so-
it like phonetically does. Or
right,
not
right.
phonetically,
So
yeah.
K is cool the first time
Right,
around.
but then the second
and then
time,
the second
it's just-
time K is death.
K is
So
death. Which the thing that I feel is the most special, because it is my sense of humor, is the huge string of absurdism.
yeah.
And just
Yeah.
like that kind of feeling of like, dad and mom aren't watching, meaning the studio, meaning the thing of like, it's as if they had Will Ferrell on set the whole time, even when he wasn't acting, and be like, what would you do here just to make yourself laugh? And he told them, and they had the actors do it. There's constantly this through line of just such weirdness and things that could have gone, like, it was like, I know what joke this is going to be, and then I don't. Like when she takes Ken, when she's pretending to take Ken back, and he goes around the corner, you're ready for a woohoo, and then I come back and instead he screams sublime.
Yes.
Off camera, he screams sublime. I could not have seen that coming, and I could have written 18 of what, of course, you would have seen coming. And instead, he screams
Yeah.
sublime.
Right.
This film has such a streak of absurdism, but that works. Not just absurdism for absurdism's sake, just to take you, just everyone, when they're leaving, everyone just starts doing that weird, slow wave goodbye. And it's just so weird, but it's so funny. This movie is like delighting itself the entire time, and that's really, really fun.
My wife, I asked, she did not see it with me, and now I'm telling her she absolutely has to. And but she said, I don't have much of a memory of Barbie. I'm probably not even going to get it. Like, all I remember is Barbie waving, and I thought, oh my God, that's the iconic bit.
That's
like
perfect.
the entire bit in the movie is waving. To your point, Tom, the absurdity of her in the car needing to use both hands to wave and not drive. Like, it was so funny. You brought up Ken, though, or Ken, we should say Ryan Gosling, who legendarily did not want to do this movie, did not
Oh, I
understand
didn't know that.
why they
didn't know
wanted
that.
him for this movie. It took a lot of convincing to get Ryan Gosling to do this film as our principal beach.
What's your job? Beach.
Beach.
It's great.
Oh, I don't run there, pointing to waves. I stand here.
And even if I did, I am not qualified to deal with it.
This is going to be rough. There's so much, Ken, that I thought was funny. Just in hindsight, it's hard to talk through it without breaking for me. Where do we stand on Ryan Gosling? His both, I'll say, dramatic performance, comedic performance, and oh my God, physical performance as Ken. Thoughts? Tom, you go first.
Outstanding. He is always, I've never been a huge Gosling fan. I remember going on record on this podcast being like, his perfect role was Blade Runner 2049, because I actually believe he is a robot.
Right.
Like, there's been a lot of times when I've been like, so everyone loves him because he's not acting. Like, I feel like he strips everything down so much. I'm like, he's just talking. But then in like this and The Nice Guys, he knows the timing of a joke. Unless someone is like, he's a marionette, he knows the physical and emotional and verbal timing of a joke incredibly well. And he doesn't have that kind of blank, like, I don't really get why this is funny, so I'm just going to play it straight and then it'll be funny. I would like to put, like, maybe, with all due respect, like Mark Wahlberg a little bit more in that. Like, he's really funny in The Good Guys, but it's because he's playing it straight.
Right.
With just a little bit more energy, and then the film around it makes it funny. He's really putting a lot of English on a lot of these lines and a lot of these jokes, and he makes himself very vulnerable at times. His overly aggressive masculine thing is amazing. It's so, and then his complete love of horses, like, that's part writing, but he really oversells it in a way that is so gratifying. He didn't need to even do as much as he did, but I'm so grateful he did. He's so perfect for it.
Yeah. Steve, did you count the pack of his abs? I think, is it 8? Is it 12?
I
Ryan
fell into
Gosling.
them once.
I think of Ryan Gosling as as kind of
I
a
meerkatted it.
softer actor. I don't think of him as this as the physical specimen, and I couldn't tell. Did he do something like, or is this a suit?
You don't
Clearly, it's
remember
a
that from
suit, right?
Crazy
It must
Sexy
be a
Love?
suit.
Crazy Stupid Love. I just watched that.
Oh,
Where
right.
Emma Stone
Yeah.
says, "Oh my God, are you photoshopped?"
Are you
Yeah.
photoshopped? This is what he
Yeah.
looked like. Yeah.
This is
Yes,
what he looks like.
exactly.
He's extraordinary. He's
Yeah.
a specimen.
He is, and it's the role of Beach Ken is an interesting one because as we were getting along the story, I thought, okay, who's the villain, right? Is Ken really the villain, or is it just that he's the opposite of Barbie? What is his function and role? Because are they at odds with each other, but he really wants her to? There's a lot of complexity going on, and what's motivating Ken to do the things that he wants, and then he discovers patriarchy, right? And it's a very interesting journey that he goes on. And yeah, just the whole Mojo Dojo Casa House, all of that hyper masculine stuff, the Sylvester Stallone stuff, all of that is just, yes, I know that's where some of the critics are going to come in on this movie of like that commentary on that. But if we look at what Barbie is, and you've got this like celebration of what it means to be feminine and the success of that. So for Ken, that's his aspiration of like, what is the ultimate masculinity taken to success? And that's what we see at odds with each other in this film. And to me, that was the smartest way to tackle that. Of how do you have a villain? It's not that he's out to undermine Barbie. It's he's got to figure out who he is himself, and that's where he goes astray with that. And so that's how we get this conflict, not of he's actively opposing Barbie. It's I've got to do my thing because you've always had your thing, but I'm just Ken, right? As he says, I'm and Ken, right? He's got to be himself, and that to me is a very smart way to structure the conflict between the two.
It's almost like he grows up like a teenager. Once they try to find themselves, they lean in traditionally way too hard. Then they're like, oh, I get it. This is the good part. I don't have to be the blank guy.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what he learned.
It's an interesting perspective too. And I think I can see, there is this sort of template for Ken, which is so much of the heart of the movie is on the void that exists when Barbie is not looking at him.
Mm-hmm.
And the film makes the point, perhaps indelicately, that when that void exists, the natural norm of man is to find and adapt to patriarchy, right? Like that there's no other. And that I think is missing the point of the punchline of the film, which is it doesn't have to be binary. It doesn't have to be hyper masculine or as a partner. It can be a middle space of
they don't all have to be girls' nights.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
And they don't all have to. Everyone has to have a horse.
Mojo Dojo Casa House with the 50-inch TV with the horses always running on a loop on it, which I thought was outstanding production design choices. So I think that was a really interesting sort of take on it, and also controversy bait, right? Because if you don't watch closely, once you get mad, you miss the end, right? Which the end absolves the movie of earlier criticism, right? A challenge. So I went in not knowing that Simu Liu was in this. JJ told me, and it was the thing I got most excited about as we took our seats. JJ, how'd you feel about our other tourist Ken?
Well, what a great balance. I think that Tourist Ken has a lot more attitude than Beach Ken, which I think is interesting because I was thinking of Kens as going to be uniform, but they weren't. And he was very comfortable with his ego in a way that maybe the other Kens were not early on. But I love watching him on screen. And both he and Ryan Gosling and their physical background being, martial arts, stance, all these kinds of things, like it made for the perfect interpretation of what was happening in the film. And then we talked actually as we were leaving too about Kingsley Ben-Adir. Like he's having a moment right now.
Yes.
He's the big bad in Secret Invasion. Like there is a lot going on in his life right now. And he is very fun to watch on screen too.
Absolutely agree, and pleasantly surprised to see Dua Lipa and John Cena as the mermaid and mermaid. And I thought that was very, very funny. The other piece that I thought was so subversive is going back into the annals of Mattel history and bringing us characters like Sugar Daddy Ken.
Oh, yes.
No, not Sugar Daddy, but Sugar's Daddy. And so
An
delightfully
earring magic Ken.
subversive. Yes, earring magic. Exactly. And then, of course, Michael Cera as Alan. And sometimes Michael Cera can be really, really Michael Cera in movies. And I did not find him overly Michael Cera. I really enjoyed Alan and what Alan represented in the movie.
Yeah, I agree. He was my boys' favorite character. They loved Alan and they wanted more Alan throughout the movie, which I think is really interesting when you think about the way that they all work together. And, we are on to the Kens, but we did not talk about Kate McKinnon. And
Weird
I
Barbie.
just want to
Yeah.
kind of throw in a Kate McKinnon as Weird Barbie. She can do no wrong in my eyes. I want to watch her in everything she does. And part of that absurdism and the idea of that every time we're in Barbie land, there is a corresponding person in the real world that is playing with this toy that is making this happens through the Weird Barbie concept. And I think what that means for the rest of the movie, you forget because you're taking part in the story, but what an interesting idea to the way that's all thrown together.
For sure. For sure. And that we get the reveal that, there is the twist that we don't know who stereotypical Barbie is being played with by, right? It turns out it's mom. Oh my goodness, shock and awe. I mean, of course it was going to be mom, but I still didn't feel like that was like I was baited toward that direction. I still felt honest.
Yep.
Yes.
And going back to Alan for a second, because he was one of my favorites too, it is interesting. There is a way to look. One of the complaints that the Barbies have, or I guess American Ferrera has, is there isn't an ordinary Barbie. That they're all so extraordinary. The daughter and they're like this, and there should be an ordinary Barbie. Again, Mattel kicking itself in its own ass when he's like, "That's a terrible idea. Oh, we can make money on that. What a great idea!"
Yes.
Again, being like, "This is all capitalism, everybody. Like we're all kind of learning. The problem is when you pat yourself on the back so hard, we're all making money." So I like that they're not shying away from that. But then Alan, it's almost like they gave themselves an ordinary Ken. Alan doesn't do anything.
Right.
And that's what we don't give Barbie. Barbie
and his
doesn't
best
seem to
friends
have...
are Barbies.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's interesting that there is just sort of this other person, and he's a very, very strong, very sad. He has the most interesting arcs of some of the, well, not arcs, just existences, I guess, because he doesn't really change because he can't. He's Alan.
He's
right.
Alan.
He's Alan.
Yeah.
Well, now, I don't know if you want to transition into talking about making money, but holy cow.
Wow.
This weekend.
Yeah.
We previewed it a little bit talking about Barbenheimer.
Which we need to talk about and explain as if we need to explain it, I guess.
Right.
But for history.
I brought it up in concept of talking about Margot Robbie as one of my favorite filmmakers because who I've always talked about before when we've had this survey was Christopher Nolan. And the only reason, well, I shouldn't say the only reason, but one of the main reasons why I saw Barbie this weekend is because I had my boys with me. But next weekend, I'm going to turn around and go see Oppenheimer right away. What I heard in terms of the money was $155 million for Barbie on week one, 81 million for Oppenheimer, which, again, this is a little bit of hyperbole, but what I've heard is potentially the third biggest opening weekend for the third biggest Hollywood weekend in history, having both those movies do so well, which is fantastic. I am so excited for both of these movies.
And it's hopefully for once sending the right knowledge or the right note to Hollywood.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they may take it as IP is the most important. The real note, the real important takeaway is original storytelling.
Original storytelling.
It's not just superhero fatigue. It is original storytelling, because Barbie is not at all like you began this entire thing, Pete. It is not a Mattel movie. It is not a Barbie movie. It is something completely of its own that sort of tackles and realigns a very well-known property. And so I'm hoping they take that away from it.
And you could say the same thing about Oppenheimer, right? I mean, well-known property. We certainly. Well, I guess that's
which Oppenheimer did you guys have growing up?
The thing.
I had Am Become Death Oppenheimer.
Right. Yes.
I had Eater of Worlds, Destroyer of Worlds.
Somebody must put that on a shirt in the Barbie typeface.
Yeah.
the thing that I think is interesting for him too is that this is his third biggest opening, non-Batman opening,
Non-Bat,
right?
Right.
This is his
right.
biggest film, right? So that is not a superhero property. So, and it's an R-rated film, and it's done an incredible, it's incredible to say, let's throw, like, in terms of supporting movies that we want to see made. This is a pretty good way to do it. Greta Gerwig's crew, I mean, in terms of bringing this thing together visually, I see this list. I'll say Water for Elephants, Argo, Wolf of Wall Street, The Homesman, Passengers, The Irishman, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Barbie. And I think those things shouldn't go together, but they
Yeah.
do in Rodrigo Prieto's catalog of movies as cinematographer. And I am so curious your thoughts on the visuals of this thing, because my goodness, what an interesting contrast to Killers of the Flower Moon, Rodrigo. And in an interview with Gerwig, she said, I kept having to pinch myself. Like, I'm so full of anxiety going into production with this because I'm sitting here with Rodrigo, who said yes. And I had to keep looking at him and say, are you sure you want to be here? Because Scorsese, right? And he said, yes, I want to be here.
Yeah. Well, he probably read
Yeah.
the script. I mean, to
Yeah.
be honest, there's so much to visually tell with this story that's here, and he does a fantastic job. The
The
colors,
guy can light. My
the
God,
reason
can he
why I
light?
wanted to watch it in OmniMax is because I wanted to be blown away by the pictures, by the colors, by all that, and it delivers. It delivers all over the place, and it's framed extremely well. At no point do you feel lost in the story. You are with it. The transitions, everything is powerful and powerfully shot, and I loved it. I'm so glad that someone with that sort of idea, that sort of creativity was signed on to do this movie.
It's very interesting because when we talk about Barbenheimer, about the marketing of these, they seem like such opposites, but as you point out, Pete, it's the look of the film, because that's really how these movies got out there. Because Oppenheimer was all marketed of, you've got to see it on this specific screen in this format. This is the way it's designed to really appreciate the visual intent of the artist behind this. This is you've got to see it in IMAX with 70 millimeter, this and that. It was very specific of, this is how to experience this film. And with Barbie, it was, all the trailers were about, this is big, it's gorgeous, it's pink. What did we hear? That there was the shortage of pink paint because the production design on this was to create this hyper real world of that everybody could look at and go, oh my gosh, that is Barbie. It was so much hinged on what you see on the screen that it pulled audiences in because they were going to go experience something they could not anywhere else. You don't want to see Oppenheimer on your phone or on your small TV at home. Barbie, you want to be immersed in that Barbie dreamland world. And that's really what both these films leveraged to they've leaned on their strengths of this. If they knew that's what was going to draw people in, because this was a unique experience that you had to go see. When it comes to the numbers, I knew Oppenheimer was going to be disadvantaged because it wasn't going to play on as many screens because of its format, and its runtime was going to limit it. I go to look to see, I can see Oppenheimer, there's like 3 showings per day and it's on like 2 screens. Barbie's playing in like 4 theaters, including these super tiny ones, and every single show is like sold out, sold out, sold out. So it was one of these things where normally I can wait till a day before to get a ticket. It was like, no, you can't wait. You're going to be stuck in the front row or on the outer fringe. People showed up in droves to see these movies because they loved the experience that they knew they were going to get from both of these filmmakers.
Did you guys have people dressed up
Oh, yeah.
for Barbie? I did too. Adults and kids alike were
Yep.
dressed up in costume. I thought that was fun. Boys and girls.
They had a whole display of pink cupcakes, and I mean, it was an event. Like, it was
Oh, really?
I didn't get a cupcake. I don't know. Did you get a cupcake, JJ? I got no cupcake.
No. But we saw Ken in a box walking in, which
yeah.
was very exciting. Yeah.
Very exciting. Yeah. Well, in terms of just sort of thinking about how we approach our ranking of this thing, this is a fantastic film, and I have to go back to, what is it, the Ebert model, right? How well does it succeed at doing what it intends to succeed, what it intends to do, right? And so I'm really curious how you guys land in our when we rate and review for Letterboxd. Before we do that, however, just some housekeeping. You can join our online community with fellow movie lovers of the True Story FM Discord server. You can join for free at thenextreel.com/Discord. And if you like what we're doing here, why not become a supporting member? Just head over to thenextreel.com/membership. You can learn more about benefits, members-only Discord channels, show live streams. You could be watching this live right now if you really, really wanted to, and so much more. Okay, Letterboxd. We are on Letterboxd, True Story FM's family of film podcasts, all part of the Next Reel's HQ page. Letterboxd is a great way to track movies you see, write your own reviews, and be a part of the larger community of film lovers just like yourself.
Oh.
Sign up. They all look like you. Go look in a mirror. They all look just like you. You can sign up for your own account today, and if you upgrade to a pro or patron account, use the discount code NEXTREEL at checkout and save 20%. This works for renewals as well. Out of 5 stars, gents, where do you 0.5s count? Although you know me, no half stars, Pete Wright. Where do you stand on this movie, Steve?
This is tricky because I'm going to play the long game here, and I'm going to say this is going to end up at a 4.5. My theatrical experience was 5 stars because the woman sitting next to me. So, as opposed to Magic Mike's Last Dance, where I went in and was surrounded by women, this was a different experience because they really were empowered in a different way. The woman next to me is America Ferrera delivers her speech, and the woman next to me is just like, "Whoop, yeah, go!" And I was waiting for the crowd to erupt, but it was early morning and lots of like 7 and 8-year-old girls. So I think some of the moms were like not ready to bust loose with that, but there was definitely a palpable energy in the room as this movie played out. And to me, that made it a 5-star experience. And I think that watching this again at home later on, it'll probably be a 4.5 because there is something about the community experience of engaging with this, which is again why I compare it to Rocky Horror Picture Show. This is an event experience, so that's where I'm going to end up 4.5 in a heart.
All right, JJ.
Well, I started out as a 4.5 as well, Steve. And as we've been talking, I moved up to a 5 because really, for me, I had to think about the legs with this movie. And this movie is going to have, but it's going to last for me. This is going to be a movie that I'm going to remember. I compared it early on to, for me, in the realm of a mind bender and the considerations about life, very similar to my experience to Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I think more about like last summer and how everyone talked about Top Gun Maverick and all these things. That was last summer, or was that the summer before?
No, you're right.
I'm getting a little tripped up in the pandemic time tunnel, but how Tom Cruise came and saved film. And I feel like this weekend is going to have that effect as well. And I really attribute it to this movie and to Oppenheimer. I think both of them are going to do it. And this delivered everything that I expected and more. So it's a 5-star for me and heart.
Okay, 5-star JJ. Tom?
Hi, it's me, Tom. I've been here the whole time. I am going to give it, I loved this movie. I loved the experience. I loved being in a room filled with people. I loved seeing it with my folks, even though my mom doesn't know what Planet of the Apes is. It was all wonderful. There's one reason why I'm giving it 4.5 instead of 5. And it's because I saw Oppenheimer also. And I think Oppenheimer I think this is an extremely good film. I think Oppenheimer might be a masterpiece.
Wow.
And so I can't.
So excited.
I can't give it in the face of Oppenheimer. I can't give this as equal because it's just not. It has some minor, very quibbly issues. But for what it came out to do and what it could have been, this is a triumph. And I'm so happy that it's here. I love Oppenheimer as a weekend. This is really a celebration of film and smart film, not just film screaming in your face, but smart, what film can be. And so, 4.5 and a huge heart. And I really,
This is my challenge, though, with that thinking, right? And this is why I sort of said the way I did opening up this whole conversation, because how could Barbie have become 5 stars for you? Is there a universe when that's even possible for what the movie is?
There's one big thing for me.
What?
but it's very quibbling, and it's just something that
I want to hear the half-star quibble that would make Barbie 5 stars for you.
for a movie that is so strong and it seems like no one is watching. There's too many times in the first half of the movie where the movie is nervous, where there's way too much ADR. The only reason you put ADR when people are walking, when they turn their backs or are walking off screen and they have to jam in one little more joke, I call that an example of a nervous film. You're worried about losing your audience's attention, and there's a lot of it in the first half of this. And it's clear that there's so much strength that this film has that just didn't need that. You didn't need a writer's room to start tossing in jokes because it was as strong as could be. And so that's just that kind of nervousness is always just sort of a bullhorn in my head. That's the difference for me. But again, that's maybe more of a comment on myself than the movie. That's just something that I can't ever not hear and see. I was like, that decision was made so much later and it's not needed. Over and over.
No, and I totally get it. And I'm glad you said it because I think that's I didn't notice it at all. Like I was so lost in the movie, and that's why I'm absolutely giving it 5 stars.
Nay, hooray!
I'm on Team JJ. This movie succeeds in every way toward what it wants to be, and it gives me all of it. I'm also not I feel like I'm trying to change the way I think about my ratings. Like this is how I feel right now. Next time I watch it, could it change? Sure. It could change. And that's what I love about Letterboxd, because you can log films with different ratings over time and see how your reviews change in your diary. That's a really great thing. Oh, did I mention? Next reel at checkout saves you 20%.
What?
I know, it's really amazing.
But that's not for renewals as well, correct?
It is for renewals, Tom.
What?
It is for renewals.
I'm consistently surprised, Ken.
We have a banger next month. I can't. We really wrestled with this one.
We want you to watch our show.
That's right. We're taking the last boat out of Carpathia with Andre Overdal's The Last Voyage of the Demeter. I don't even know what we're going to get out of this. I haven't seen the trailer. I'm relying on you guys. I'm very excited about the filmmaker and definitely the screenwriter. And so I'm looking forward to that. So you guys, you're amazing. Don't forget, everybody, check out the nextreel.com/Discord. Join that community. Nextreel.com/membership. You're the best. And on behalf of Steve Sarmento, Ken.
Goodbye, Ken. Actually, I was thinking about Ken Club because I could say I am Ken's inflamed sense of rejection.
That's funny.
That's good. That's a good lead, JJ. Thank you.
Cheerio.
Look, I'm just waving. Tom.
Bye, friends.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and we'll check you next month right here on the Film Board. Meeting adjourned.